My name is Emma, I'm 35, and I discovered my husband was meticulously planning to divorce me, take everything I had ever worked for, and start a new life with my own sister. Before I tell you how I turned their greedy, backstabbing scheme completely upside down in that lawyer's conference room, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. It all came to a head at our 4th anniversary party, the one I spent weeks planning. On the surface, we were the picture of success. Mark and I. We had a beautiful, sprawling home in a quiet, leafy suburb, the kind of place where neighbors actually bring you welcome baskets. I was a senior financial advisor at a respected firm, and let's be honest, I was the architect of our comfortable life. I was the one who managed the investments, who made the savvy financial calls, who had sacrificed not one, but 2 major career promotions to relocate for Mark's job changes. I truly believed that's what love was. A partnership. Building something brick by brick, together. That night, our house was buzzing. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and expensive perfume, the sound of laughter and the cheerful clinking of champagne glasses. Mark was in his element, playing the charming host, his hand always resting possessively on the small of my back. But something was off. I started noticing the little things, the tiny cracks in the veneer. I saw the way his eyes would find my younger sister, Olivia, across the crowded room. It wasn't just a glance, it was a lingering, private look, a silent conversation I wasn't privy to. Olivia, as always, was soaking up the attention. She was the family's golden child, the effortlessly beautiful and charming one. I was the responsible one, the serious one, the one who had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. It had been the story of our entire lives. Later in the evening, I tried to pull them both in for a photograph. "Come on, you two, let's get a picture," I said, holding up my phone with a smile I didn't feel. Mark's smile was tight, forced. He put an arm around my shoulder, but it felt wooden, a prop for the photo. Olivia just waved a dismissive hand, her bracelets jangling. "Oh, honestly, no one wants to see another one of your boring photos," she said with a tinkling laugh, as if it were the funniest joke in the world. It was a casual cruelty, designed to sting, and it landed its mark perfectly. I tried to shake it off. It was just a party. I was just being overly sensitive. That's the lie I'd been telling myself for years. The real moment of clarity came later, after the last guest had departed and the house was quiet. As we were getting ready for bed, Mark's phone buzzed on the nightstand. He snatched it up with a speed that was almost violent. He angled the screen away from me, his thumbs flying across the keyboard. He typed a quick reply and then, with a deliberate swipe, deleted the entire message thread. "Who is that so late?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. "Oh, just a spam text," he said without missing a beat, not meeting my eyes as he placed the phone face down. "You know how it is." But I had seen it. For a fraction of a second, before the screen went dark, I saw the name at the top of the thread. It was Olivia. A knot of ice formed in the pit of my stomach. That was the moment the first real crack appeared in the perfect facade of my life. And I had the sickening, gut-wrenching feeling that the entire structure was about to come crashing down around me. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in quiet, creeping horror. That single, deleted text message became a lens through which I viewed my entire life, and suddenly, patterns I had ignored for years came into sharp, painful focus. I started connecting dots, replaying conversations, and seeing the truth that had been hiding in plain sight. I remembered my college graduation. I had won the department's top award for my thesis, a significant honor. I was buzzing with pride when I called my parents. "That's wonderful, dear," my father had said, his voice already distant, clearly distracted by the television in the background. Then my mother got on the line. Before I could even tell her about the awards ceremony, she cut me off. "Emma, you won't believe it. Olivia just got a call back for a local car commercial. The casting director said she has real star potential. Isn't that just the most exciting news?" I remember standing in my dorm room, the academic head I was so proud of feeling heavy on my shoulders. I was an achievement to be checked off a list, but Olivia was a story to be told, a dream to be celebrated. The phone felt like a lead weight in my hand. The joy of my accomplishment evaporated, replaced by that old, familiar feeling of being invisible. Then my mind drifted to Mark, to the start of his failed tech venture a few years ago. He had been so passionate, so convincing. He'd spread blueprints and projections across our dining room table, painting a picture of a future where we would be set for life. All he needed was a significant capital injection to get it off the ground. He'd looked at me with those earnest, pleading eyes. "Emma, this is our shot," he'd said. "I know it's a risk, but it's for us." I had my own money then, a small but significant inheritance from my grandmother. It wasn't just money, it was my security, my independence, a safety net I had carefully invested and grown. My best friend, Rachel, had been horrified when I told her I was considering it. We were having coffee, and she'd put her cup down with a clatter. "Emma, absolutely not," she'd said, her voice firm. "You have sacrificed enough. You put your career on hold for him. What has he ever truly sacrificed for you?" But I was in love, and I wanted to be the supportive wife from the movies. I ignored the knot of anxiety in my stomach, the very same feeling I was having now. I ignored my own financial acumen that told me the business plan was flawed. I wrote him the check. The business folded in less than a year, taking my entire inheritance with it. Mark was devastated for a week, and then he never spoke of it again. The loss was simply absorbed into the background of my life, another sacrifice I had made for us. Now, his behavior was a constant barrage of red flags. He started these casual, probing conversations that made the hairs on my arms stand up. One evening, while we were watching a home renovation show, he said, "You know, honey, I was just thinking. With the market the way it is, I wonder what we could get for this house if we sold it." A few days later, it was about our retirement accounts. "It's so confusing having them all in separate places," he mused. "Maybe we should look into consolidating them with a single manager. It would be so much easier to track our retirement portfolio." I am a financial advisor. I build and manage multi-million-dollar portfolios for a living. It wasn't confusing to him, he was probing. He was mapping out my financial landscape. He was taking a detailed inventory of the assets he planned to claim. The texting with Olivia became a constant, secret hum in the background of our lives. He'd be on the couch, smiling at his phone, a private, intimate smile that I hadn't seen directed at me in years. The excuses were always ready. "We're planning a surprise birthday party for you," he'd say with a straight face. Or, "Olivia's just having some drama with her latest boyfriend, she needs my advice." He was an expert at gaslighting. He'd twist my valid concerns into accusations, making me feel like I was the paranoid one, the controlling wife. For a while, I almost believed him. I almost started to think I was going crazy, that I was inventing this betrayal in my own head. But that cold, hard knot in my stomach just kept getting tighter. It was an internal compass, and it was pointing directly at a truth I was terrified to face. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that something was deeply and fundamentally wrong. I just needed the proof. And I was about to find it. The dam of my denial finally broke on a dreary Tuesday afternoon. Mark had told me he was going to be tied up in off-site meetings all day and wouldn't be home until late. I had a rare afternoon free from client appointments and decided to work from home. Our house had a small office with a shared desktop computer, a relic from a few years ago that we barely used anymore. We had laptops, tablets, the desktop just sat there gathering dust. But on a hunch, a sick, desperate feeling that I couldn't push away any longer, I walked into the office and pressed the power button. The machine whirred to life. I don't know what I was truly looking for. An open social media account? A revealing browser history? I felt like a thief in my own home, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I knew Mark was meticulous about covering his tracks on his phone, but people get lazy. People forget about the old, dusty corners of their digital lives. I scanned his browser history, his documents folder. Nothing. It was all clean, generic. My shoulders slumped. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe I was inventing this all. Then, I remembered a trick a tech-savvy colleague had once shown me at work when we needed to recover a client's accidentally deleted file. A simple, free piece of software that could scan a hard drive and restore recently deleted items. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type the name of the software into the search bar. I downloaded it, my breath held tight in my chest. I ran the scan. A progress bar crawled across the screen, each percentage point an eternity. Finally, a list of files populated the screen. Most of it was junk, temporary internet files, system cache. My eyes scanned the list, my hope dwindling. And then I saw it. A Word document, deleted just over a week ago. The file name was one word, strategy. My blood ran cold. It felt like the temperature in the room had dropped 20 degrees. With a trembling finger, I clicked on the file name. The document flickered open, and the world fell out from under me. It wasn't just a document. It was an email. A draft, saved and then deleted, written by Mark, addressed to Olivia. My vision blurred. I had to grip the sides of the desk to steady myself, forcing myself to read the words on the screen. Each one was a separate, deliberate stab to my heart. Liv, it began, the casual intimacy like a slap in the face. Just a few more weeks. The lawyer says we need to be extremely careful until everything is officially filed. Don't worry about her suspicions. If she confronts you, just do what you do best. Cry. Play the victim. You know how mom and dad will always take your side. My breath hitched in my throat. It kept going. He detailed his plan to file for divorce, a disgusting, self-serving narrative about how I was emotionally distant, too obsessed with my career to be a good wife. He wrote about how his sacrifices for my career, the moves I had put my own promotions on hold for, entitled him to a hefty spousal support package. And then, the line that made a wave of nausea crash over me. Just focus on getting her to sign the initial settlement papers without a big fight. The lawyer is confident we can make a case for the house and the bulk of the assets. Once she signs, we're home free. We can sell this place and start fresh, somewhere sunny. Just you and me, with her money. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just a sordid affair. It was a conspiracy. A cold, calculated, predatory plot to strip me of everything I had ever worked for, orchestrated by my husband and my own flesh and blood sister. The two people who were supposed to be my family, my closest allies. I thought about all the years of being made to feel second best to Olivia. All the times I had swallowed my pride, my hurt, to keep the peace in the family. All the sacrifices, big and small, I had made for Mark, for our marriage, for the future I thought we were building together. And it was all a lie. I wasn't a wife to him. I was an asset to be liquidated. And my expiration date had finally arrived. For a long, long time, I just sat there, staring at the screen, the silence in the house a deafening roar in my ears. The shock was a physical presence, a heavy blanket that smothered every other emotion. There were no tears. The betrayal was too deep, too absolute for something as simple as crying. It felt like a part of my soul had been surgically removed without anesthesia. That night, I lay in bed next to him. I listened to the sound of his steady breathing, the breathing of a man without a conscience, and I felt nothing but a chilling, Arctic ice spreading through my veins. The pain was still there, of course, a massive, gaping wound in my chest. But underneath it, something else was beginning to form. Something hard, and sharp, and unbreakable. It was rage. A quiet, focused, crystalline rage. He thought I was a fool. They both did. They thought I was the dependable, emotional, easy-to-manipulate Emma who would crumble and cry and be easily managed. They had no idea who they were dealing with. They had forgotten one crucial detail. I wasn't just a wife. I was a damn good financial advisor. And they were about to get a masterclass in asset management. The next morning, I watched him leave for work. He was whistling a cheerful, carefree tune. He blew me a kiss from the doorway. The sheer hypocrisy of it was staggering. As soon as his car pulled out of the driveway, a strange, powerful calm settled over me. The grief was still there, but it was no longer my master. It was now my fuel. I walked into the home office and looked at the shattered picture frame I had thrown in a fit of despair the night before. I carefully picked up the pieces, not of the frame, but of my old, naive life. And then I picked up the phone. "James," I said when my old colleague and trusted lawyer answered. "It's Emma. I need you to draw up a strategy. Not for defense. For a win." The meeting with James in his downtown office was like stepping out of a suffocating fog and into the clear, cold light of day. I laid everything out for him, the years of financial imbalance, the suspicious behavior, the failed business loan, and finally, the printed-out copy of the strategy email. I expected him to be shocked, to offer sympathy. What I got was something far better, righteous anger and a brilliant plan. "First things first, Emma," he said, his voice a low, controlled burn. He leaned forward, his hands steepled on his desk. "We need to be surgical. Legally, you can't just start moving assets that are considered marital property without his signature. He could use that against you, claim your hiding funds, and it would muddy the waters." My heart, which had been filled with a cold resolve, sank a little. "So what do I do? Just let him take it?" "Absolutely not," James said, a sharp, predatory glint in his eye that I was profoundly grateful for. "We don't hide them. We fortify them. And we do it all completely by the book. Your greatest advantage, Emma, is the truth. You are the primary breadwinner and have been for years. We're not going to play defense. We are going to build an ironclad fortress of documentation so high and so strong that by the time he tries to climb it, he'll just fall and break his neck." The strategy was a masterpiece of legal and financial maneuvering. Step 1 was immediate and simple. I went to a completely different bank that afternoon and opened a new checking and savings account, in my name only. I filled out a new direct deposit form at my office. Effective the next pay period, my entire substantial salary would be deposited there. It was my income, earned by my labor, and I had every right to control where it went. Step 2 was the paper trail. This was my homework. James had me spend the next 2 weeks becoming a forensic accountant of my own life. I pulled every financial document I could find, going back to the beginning of our relationship. Bank statements, mortgage documents, property tax records, brokerage statements for my investment portfolio, my 401k contributions, car titles. I even found the wire transfer confirmation from 7 years ago when I had foolishly paid for Mark's failed business venture with my grandmother's inheritance. "We need to create an undeniable narrative, Emma," James explained, his voice firm. "A clear, simple story told in numbers that shows exactly who built this life. Every dollar you contributed, every asset you purchased with your own premarital funds or salary, we document it, we source it, we prove it." So that's what I did. My evenings were no longer spent making dinner or waiting for Mark to come home from his late meetings. They were spent in my home office, which I now thought of as my war room. I had shoeboxes of files spread across the floor. I bought a new set of highlighters and created a color-coded system, pink for my direct contributions to the house down payment and mortgage, yellow for investments made directly from my salary, blue for shared household expenses that I had covered disproportionately. Mark remained blissfully, arrogantly oblivious. He'd see me at my desk, surrounded by papers, and just assume it was a big project for work. "Don't work too hard, honey," he'd say, peeking his head in with that fake, solicitous smile. "Make sure you get some rest." The hypocrisy was so thick I could have choked on it. He had no idea I was meticulously documenting his impending financial ruin. One night, he walked in unexpectedly as I had a stack of his old credit card statements on the desk, highlighting lavish purchases made while I was paying our mortgage. I swept them under a file folder just in time, my heart hammering. The risk made the mission even more critical. The final piece of the plan was the legal checkmate. James drafted a document called a lease pendens. He explained it to me in simple, powerful terms. The very moment he serves you with divorce papers, he said, we file this with the county court. It's a public notice that this property is the subject of ongoing litigation. It essentially freezes the asset. He won't be able to sell the house, refinance it, or do anything with it until a judge has ruled on the equitable division of property, a division based on the mountain of evidence you are currently building. It wasn't about hiding the money. It was about putting a legal lock on it, a lock to which only the undeniable truth held the key. During those 2 weeks, I lived a surreal double life. To Mark, I was the same dutiful, slightly stressed wife. I made small talk about his day, I listened to his fabricated stories about work, I played my part to perfection. But inside, I was a general preparing for a battle he didn't even know was coming. I confided only in Rachel, who was my rock. She'd come over with coffee and just sit with me in silence while I worked, her steady presence a balm to my frayed nerves. Are you going to be okay through all this? She asked one night, looking at the meticulously organized binders that now lined my office shelves. I looked up from a spreadsheet where I was tracing the flow of my inheritance money. My eyes were tired, but they were clear. I don't know if okay is the right word yet, I said honestly. But for the first time in a very long time, Rachel, I feel like I'm in control of my own life. I wasn't the victim in this story anymore. I was the strategist. And my plan was complete. Mark thought he was setting a trap for a mouse. He had no idea he was about to walk right into a cage I had built specifically for a rat. Exactly 2 weeks and 1 day after my meeting with James, it happened. The timing was almost poetic. Mark sat me down on the living room couch, the same couch where we'd watched countless movies, the same couch where I'd comforted him when his business failed, rubbing his back and telling him everything would be all right. He had a serious, rehearsed expression on his face, the look of a man about to perform a difficult but necessary duty. Emma, he started, his voice dripping with a false sincerity that turned my stomach. This is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I just looked at him. I kept my face a perfect, neutral mask. I gave him absolutely nothing to work with. I think we need to get a divorce, he said, finally landing the line he'd practiced. He then launched into a speech that I recognized almost word for word from the email I had found. I was too focused on my career. I was emotionally unavailable. We had grown apart. He deserved to be happy. He deserved more from life. It was a masterwork of self-serving fiction. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't scream or throw things. That's what he wanted. That's what his plan with Olivia depended on, me being an emotional, hysterical wreck, easy to manipulate and quick to sign anything just to make the pain stop. My quiet acceptance was a wrench in his gears. I just sat there and nodded slowly when he was finished. I see, I said, my voice perfectly even. My calmness clearly unnerved him. It wasn't in the script. So, you agree? He asked, a flicker of genuine confusion in his eyes. If that's what you truly feel is best, Mark, I replied, my voice betraying no emotion at all. The next day, a courier delivered a thick, intimidating envelope to my office. The divorce papers. I took them to my desk, closed my door, and opened them. The sheer, unmitigated audacity of it almost made me laugh out loud. He wanted everything. The house, which my meticulously organized binders now proved I had paid 85% of. He wanted half of my 401k, my entire investment portfolio, and, the crowning jewel of his greed, ongoing spousal support, citing his career setbacks were due to supporting my demanding job. He had hired a notoriously aggressive divorce lawyer, a real shark known for tearing women like me to shreds in court. The war had officially begun. But he didn't know I was already dug into a fortified trench, armed to the teeth and waiting for him to charge. I immediately called James. "He filed," I said, my voice steady. "It's time. Execute the plan." Within the hour, James had filed our official response with the court, including the lease pendants on the house. The legal trap was now set and baited. The day of the mediation arrived, cold and gray. We sat on opposite sides of a long, polished mahogany table in a sterile, soulless conference room. Mark sat next to his lawyer, a smug, reptilian man in an absurdly expensive suit. Mark himself looked confident, almost triumphant, unable to hide a small smirk. He thought this was a formality. He thought he was just a few hours away from securing his new, sun-drenched life with my money and my sister. His lawyer began, his voice as smooth and oily as his slicked-back hair. He laid out their demands, the same ones from the papers, weaving a pathetic narrative of Mark as the wronged, emotionally neglected, supportive husband who was entitled to a generous settlement for his years of silent suffering. It was a performance worthy of an award. I just sat there, my hands folded calmly on the table in front of me. I let him finish his entire, uninterrupted monologue. When he was done, a smug, expectant silence filled the room. He looked at James, clearly anticipating a weak, emotional counteroffer. James just smiled faintly, a slow, dangerous smile. "That's a very compelling story, counsel," he said, his voice deceptively soft. "However, it seems to be missing a few key financial details." He reached into his pristine leather briefcase and pulled out a thick, 3-inch binder. It was the first of my 3 war binders. He placed it on the table with a solid, definitive thud that echoed in the quiet room and made both Mark and his lawyer jump slightly. "Let's start with the primary asset, the house," James said, flipping open the binder to the first tab, which was labeled in bold, "Real Estate Equity Source." According to our records, which include certified bank statements, wire transfer receipts, and closing documents, your client, Mr. Evans, contributed approximately 15% to the original down payment and subsequent mortgage payments. The other 85%, as you can see, was paid directly from Ms. Adams' personal salary and a prior, documented inheritance. Mark's smug expression faltered, replaced by a flicker of confusion. His lawyer's eyes narrowed. He leaned forward to squint at the top document, a bank statement with my name and my name alone on it, showing a massive transfer to the escrow company. James wasn't done. He was just warming up. As for the investment portfolio, he continued, flipping to another color-coded section labeled Brokerage Assets. It was funded entirely by performance bonuses and vested stock options from Ms. Adams' employment. We have the pay stubs and the brokerage statements from before the marriage to prove its origin. Mark's face was starting to turn a blotchy, unpleasant shade of red. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered, looking at his lawyer for help. "She's been hiding money. She's trying to screw me." "On the contrary," James said smoothly, his voice never rising. "She's simply revealing the truth of your financial history. And speaking of the house, I should probably inform you both that the moment your client filed his petition for divorce, we filed a lease pendants with the county court." Mark's lawyer stiffened as if he'd been tasered. He knew exactly what that meant. His eyes shot to Mark, a look of pure, unadulterated fury on his face. "You didn't tell me that," he hissed, his voice a venomous whisper. "There was nothing to tell," I said, speaking for the first time. My voice was steady, clear, and as cold as ice. "He didn't know." Mark finally snapped. He lost all composure. He pointed a shaking, accusatory finger at me across the vast expanse of the table. "You planned this. You were planning to leave me and take everything. You manipulative bitch." James held up a single, calming hand. "Speaking of planning," he said, turning to his laptop. He clicked a file and swiveled the screen to face them. And there it was. The email. The strategy draft from Mark to Olivia, projected in large, clear, damning letters for everyone in the room to see. I watched, with a detached sense of vindication, as Mark's lawyer read the words on the screen. I saw his face cycle through a fascinating range of emotions, from anger to shock, and finally, to utter, professional disgust. He read the most damning line aloud, his voice dripping with contempt. "Just get her to sign the initial settlement papers, the house and most of the assets will be ours." He slowly, deliberately, turned to his client. Mark was ashen. He looked like a cornered, terrified animal. He opened his mouth, but no words came out, only a dry, clicking sound. "It appears, counsel," James said, closing his laptop with a quiet, final snap, "that your client's petition for divorce is not based on irreconcilable differences, but on a premeditated and documented attempt at felony fraud." The game was over. Checkmate. The smug, reptilian lawyer threw his expensive Montblanc pen down on the table. It clattered loudly in the stunned silence. He stood up, looked at Mark with a loathing that was almost palpable, and said, "We are done here." He gathered his papers and walked out of the room without another word, leaving his client to drown. Mark was left alone at the table, his triumphant future having evaporated into thin air. He stared at me, his eyes a toxic cocktail of hatred, disbelief, and for the first time, fear. He had underestimated me. They both had. And it had just cost him everything. The fallout was swift and merciless. Mark's lawyer officially withdrew from the case the very next day, citing a fundamental and irreconcilable disagreement with his client. The word fraud has a way of doing that. Mark scrambled to find another lawyer, but the story of the documented conspiracy, a story James's firm made sure was discreetly known in the local legal community, made him radioactive. No reputable attorney would touch his case. His calls and texts began almost immediately, a pathetic cycle of rage and desperation. At first, they were venomous. "You're a manipulative snake, Emma. You'll regret this for the rest of your life." Then, as the cold, hard reality of his financial and legal predicament set in, the tone shifted to desperate, cloying pleas. "Emma, please, we can talk about this. I made a mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. I was confused. I never responded." I read each one, allowed myself a small, grim smile, and then blocked his number. The news ripped through our circle of friends and family like a shockwave. Olivia, predictably, went into full-on victim mode. She called everyone we knew, sobbing, claiming Mark had twisted her words, manipulated her, that she was just a pawn in his game. But the email, the words in black and white, told a different, undeniable story. For the first time in her charmed life, her tears and her beauty didn't work. Friends who had known us for years saw the cold, calculated greed for what it was. They stopped calling her. She was ostracized. The hardest part, as always, was my parents. They called me, their voices laced with that familiar, pained disappointment they always reserved for me when I didn't fall in line. "Emma, we know what Mark and Olivia did was wrong," my mother began, her voice trembling with self-righteous sorrow, "but he's your husband. Family is family. You have to find it in your heart to forgive them. Think of the scandal." I listened to her, and I felt a profound sense of finality, like a chapter closing with a heavy thud. It wasn't anger anymore. It was just a quiet, sad clarity. They still didn't get it. They never would. They still saw me as the family's emotional shock absorber, the one who was supposed to swallow the pain and smooth things over for everyone else's comfort. "I agree, Mom," I said, my voice surprisingly calm and steady. "Family is the most important thing in the world. That's why I'm building a new one. One based on trust and respect." I heard her sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Before she could launch into another guilt-laden lecture, I said, "I have to go now," and I gently hung up the phone. I wasn't cutting them out of my life with anger or drama. I was simply closing a door that had been letting in a cold draft for 35 years. I was choosing my own warmth. I was choosing myself. The divorce was finalized a few months later. It was a quiet, anticlimactic affair. Mark, unable to afford a decent lawyer and facing a potential fraud investigation, had no choice but to accept the terms James and I laid out. He walked away with his personal belongings, his car, and half of the small joint savings account I had deliberately left untouched as a token. He got nothing else. The house was mine. My retirement funds, my 401k, my investments, were all mine. My future was mine. The 8 months that followed were a period of quiet, steady, and joyful rebuilding. The first thing I did was reclaim my space, exorcising the ghosts of my past life. I hired painters and had the entire interior of the house, once decorated in Mark's preferred palette of drab, masculine grays and browns, painted in bright, warm, vibrant colors. The heavy, dark furniture he had picked out was donated to a charity that helps families start over. I turned his old office, the very room where he had plotted my downfall, into a yoga and meditation room, with a huge bay window that let in the glorious morning sun. Every brushstroke, every new piece of furniture, was a declaration: this is my home. My sanctuary. My space. My career, the very thing he had tried to weaponize against me, flourished in a way it never had before. My boss, Eleanor, a woman I had admired for years, had been a quiet source of support through the whole ordeal. She saw the same meticulous, strategic mind I had used to save myself and realized its untapped value. She offered me a promotion, making me a senior partner at the firm. But the most significant change was an idea that sparked from the ashes of my own pain. Eleanor and I began developing a new, nonprofit branch of our firm. It was a pro bono division dedicated to providing financial literacy education and legal resources for women facing contentious divorces or trying to escape financially abusive situations. We called it the Phoenix Initiative. I started hosting small, free workshops on the weekends. I shared my story, and I taught women how to read financial documents, how to protect their assets, how to build their own fortresses. I was turning my deepest wound into a source of strength and empowerment for others. My real family, my chosen family, rallied around me. Rachel, James, Eleanor, and a few other loyal friends who had seen the truth from the start became my constant support system. We had weekly dinners, filled with easy laughter and genuine affection. One evening, we were all gathered in my newly renovated living room, the air filled with the scent of roasted chicken and good wine, celebrating my promotion. Rachel raised her glass. "To Emma," she said, her eyes shining with pride. "Who went through hell and came back with a roadmap for everyone else." Everyone cheered. As I looked around at their faces, at the warmth and unconditional love in that room, I realized I hadn't just won a divorce. I had won my entire life back. I had lost a husband and a sister who were never truly mine to begin with, but in the process, I had found myself. And that was a victory worth celebrating more than any financial settlement. The final loose end was tied up in the most unexpected, and perhaps most fitting, way. I was sitting in my garden one perfect sunny afternoon, reading a book, when an email popped up on my phone from an old mutual friend of Mark's and mine. The subject line was just one word: wow. The email was short and to the point. It said that Mark was in serious financial trouble. After the divorce, he and Olivia had tried to make a go of it, but without my salary to fund their lavish lifestyle, things had fallen apart with shocking speed. He'd lost his job, they were deeply in debt. The final sentence was the one that made me put my phone down on the grass beside me. Olivia left him last month. Apparently, she found someone else, someone older, with a much bigger wallet. I read the words, and I waited for a feeling. A surge of triumph? A sense of schadenfreude? A satisfying jolt of "I told you so"? But nothing came. There was no satisfaction, no joy in his ruin. There was only a quiet, peaceful emptiness. Their story was no longer my story. Their drama, their karma, was no longer my concern. I thought about the man I had married, the boy I had once loved. I thought about the sister I had grown up with, the one I had spent a lifetime trying to win over. I felt a faint, ghostly echo of sadness, not for them, but for the woman I used to be, the one who had tried so desperately hard to earn a love that was never on offer. She was gone now. And I didn't miss her one bit. I picked up my phone, not to reply, but to delete the email. I took a sip of my iced tea, the cool glass a pleasant weight in my hand. I turned back to my book. The sun was warm on my face, the garden I had planted myself was in full, glorious bloom, and a new chapter was waiting. I was finally, completely, and gloriously free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I know so many of you have faced your own battles, your own betrayals. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between the family you were born into and your own well-being and peace of mind? I'd love to hear your story and your thoughts in the comments below. And if my journey resonated with you, please give this video a like and subscribe for more stories of strength and new beginnings. You are not alone.